And I think what that would help two things. Number one, particularly, well, it would help time management, right? You wouldn't have the responsibility, you wouldn't have to feel responsible to understand the whole space. You could just focus your investment on the projects and challenges that really matter to you. And I think, yeah, because I know even for myself, it's really hard to evaluate all the proposals, and you end up still wanting to be influential. So you end up making votes where you really haven't thought it through very carefully, and so to me, a kind of a first next step would just be that your AIDA votes are a budget. And you have to think about how you want to spread your budget across which the projects you want to make an influential statement about.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. So it's almost like your voting power is spent whenever you cast it. So it's like if you have 1,000 ADA and you vote with 100 ADA behind a proposal, now you only have 900 voting power left. That's really cool.
Right.
I like that. I think another thing that comes to my mind, and this is just me thinking out loud, it could be just like we could have a tier system of some sort, right? Like we'll have a bottom tier of, not to make it sound that way, but like people who are voting with only 500 ADA from their wallet, then mid tier, which is like maybe 500 to like, I don't know, 300,000 or whatever, and then 300,000 to like maybe 1 million. And then we could, anyone who votes in those category will get a certain vote, like a power towards a proposal, if that makes any higher level sense. We move forward to like, so that the power doesn't get concentrated with people who are holding a lot of ADA and they become extremely influential. So I don't know, something that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish we could do stuff like that. The only issue is at least that I see is what can end up happening in these models where you tell people that, hey, 500 ADA gets you this amount of voting power, 1,000 ADA gets you this amount of power, 200,000 gets you this amount of power. What ends up happening is I could go out there and I could just create two separate wallets, and then that means is if I have that. If I have enough ADA, I can now essentially game it. So it's like, oh, I'm going to create 10 wallets and each is going to have 10,000 because that's going to be the optimal amount of voting power. And now I have lots of influence. So that's kind of the issue where it's like, I totally agree with the idea where it's like, it's very difficult to come up with a proper model and not have it just be ADA amount equals voting power amount. But it's almost like any other model can be instantly gamed. Which can be difficult.
It's interesting because I know like the ultimate solution is the digital identities, but I've been wondering if there's sort of intermediate solutions too. Like obviously people can buy multiple phones and maybe even all they need is the chip so they could set up an electronic kind of base. So I understand that people can replicate phones, but that doesn't seem to me to be an easy process that a lot of people would take on.
Very true.
So that to me is one control mechanism on that. And then I've also wondered, like anyone who's participating in the voting has registered on IdeaScale in order to read the proposals, right? And so there is a pseudo identity associated there. And I do understand that you could register multiple accounts, but that to me seems like another control mechanism. If you had a wallet, a phone, and an IdeaScale ID all linked together. It's not perfect, but it seems to me that it would dampen this motivation to try to have many wallets.
Has anyone done much research into whether high value proposals have been voted by very small, large wallets? Like, is this like we discuss this regularly, but I haven't heard of any evidence of it being the case. And I still think it can be the case and we should discuss and prepare and be ready for. But at the same time, at the phase that we're in at the moment, if it's not happening and we don't have evidence that it is happening, then because on the other side is...
So can you restate your question? Because I didn't understand how you were...
I wonder if any high value projects have been voted on by like high cost projects have been voted on by very few large wallets.
Oh, I see.
Which would be evidence that they're looking for undue influence towards some mean other than the best thing for Cardano, right? Because the other argument of everything is that if I have more ADA, I have more to benefit and to lose from this process failing.
Right.
So if I'm a huge whale, I'd look to either find people who can go and look for the good projects, because that's going to increase the value of my ADA over time. Right. And at the same time, if I just go around shooting for random projects as a huge whale and they all start failing and bad things start happening because of what my actions are, I'm going to lose more from that point of view. So that the equal argument in this is that one of the reasons why it's working the way it is because right now a lot of interesting projects are getting funded all over the place. Some being supported by whales, some not being supported by whales, but the process is working because many projects are being funded and successful and starting up and increasing value, use and utility of Cardano, and that's the end goal of what we're trying to do with the Catalyst project. So we can spend a lot of time adjusting the voting system, and I think we should look into it and we should explore things for sure. But at the same time, if there's no real evidence that it's a huge problem, then we can continue where it is, for now.
Yeah, so we requested that data and we don't have it yet. And our project is completed now, but I've still gone back to IOG to request that data because I feel like that is needed to really complete a good, thorough analysis. So I'm hoping to still be able to do that. And I do think that our analysis showed that there is an issue. And even with some simpler data, I've even asked for a simpler data set that would kind of show it more, that this is true of any community. It's not unique to Catalyst, but given you can think of it, one way to think about this is that we all know kind of the foundation of blockchain working is that it's a trustless, decentralized mechanism, right? And we know that depending on the design, either a 1/3 or 51% TAC completely undermines the system and it no longer works. And smaller blockchains have been exposed to that and been corrupted. You can think of it that same way in the voting process, right? That I haven't looked at this specifically, but this would be a good next step in the analysis is, how far are we away from some of the wallets having either a 1/3 or 50% of the total votes, and therefore having really completely controlling influence over what projects get funded and not funded.
Yeah, and I would like to add a little bit more onto that. It's like interesting because if you see like when the whole DeFi movement, I know Catalyst is like still starting. I mean, not starting. I mean, we're in number 7, but like you see this in other communities too, right? People who are like very good at communicating really, really well could sometimes not be the best at development, right? And I last year when the whole DeFi movement started, and this was like mostly in Ethereum and Uniswap was becoming big, what started happening was like some of these like degen projects that come out, like they were really good at presenting like this idea and this and that, and they'll raise a lot of funds, like people who have a lot of money would put in there, then they just don't go anywhere. Like we've seen that, like I've seen that, right? So it's like, although it's not exactly the same because right here we're voting, it's like, it's interesting, like to see like, how do we get to like where the value is, right? Like, okay, this project has this value and that's what it is. and then they can actually deliver on it, and then having that voting power behind it, rather than coming at a place where, hey, I just want this project to be funded because of XYZ reason, which is probably not correlated to the value as much. Something that I've seen in other communities too. So that's interesting.
Yeah. It's a good point. And I have a response to it, but maybe there's some other people that have a response to your excellent remarks.
I would say that's what the CA process is currently designed to achieve, right? That the community, if you choose to go and participate in that, you are on a set of criteria based essentially on value and whether it can be achieved. And then you're ranking the projects in that format as a hive mind process. So that's
if I may ask, like, I know so this is my first time, right? So up until like Fund 6, so we've had like some out of like all the projects that were funded were like, I know like what's that project so out of all the projects that were like, I know Cardex was funded and a couple of other like Ergo, I know they also got funding, but out of all the projects, how many of them were like really successful, and how many of them like kind of didn't do as well? I'm just kind of curious. I don't know. So just to kind of think like what happened there a little bit in the past.
There's a reporting mechanism. It's still in development, but as projects succeed or finish their funding and their goals, they produce a video that is publicly available. So as more and more successful projects go through the Catalyst process, more and more of these videos will be available, and of course be free. There's already a few that are out there that how you get to them maybe could be better worked on, but they are around and you can watch them and they will tell you how they did it, what value was obtained to the community, how they spent the money, this types of things.
Yeah, okay. And they also. Go ahead, Kenrick.
Go ahead, Data.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say also, if you're looking for updates on these projects, one really, really awesome spot to go to is the Project Catalyst town halls. Generally, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, watching the first maybe like 20, 30 minutes or so, generally that is when there's 1 to 3 presentations from funded or currently working to be completed funded proposals. And they'll give you kind of status updates on what they're building. And I think that'd be nice. Yeah, in terms of we're kind of getting all of these. Let's give Kenrick the floor, but I think then we're probably going to turn things back to the IDEAFest and kind of get things wrapped up.
Okay, well, I'll just try to. Samad, you had a really good point that I've thought about too, in terms of the difference between kind of people who have good social skills and therefore might do well in a voting system versus people who might have good technical skills, and how are they going to represent the community. And one area I see that to be particularly important is we currently have a circle, and I'm representing the CA group as their representative on the Catalyst Circle, and that's a leadership team for the community. And there's in process a technical group that's going to represent the parameters of the Catalyst voting process, for instance, and that's currently appointed by IOG, but eventually will be a community decision. And I've expressed the concern that those technical representatives, a voting process where they have to represent themselves in a political process, might not be the best way to choose a technical representative. So I've asked the circle to think about whether there's some other processes that would still get community input, but would involve more of an interview kind of process of finding the right people with the right technical skills that can represent these parameters appropriately.
Awesome. Yeah, that's some great ideas. And I think what that conversation to loop it back to IDEAFest is why we hold these events, is so that we can all be together and have 67 people in the same Zoom breakout room, and we can discuss how can we best include the technical folks into the Catalyst circle? How can we best include the folks that might not be able to have as much of that, hey, I can get up on a stage and speak to people, but hey, I have a deep technical know-how in how voting should occur, how Pluto smart contracts occur, how I can utilize the extended UTXO model. So I think that's a really beautiful point to kind of transition to IDEAFest. And that's why we're all here, is to share these ideas, to present them, and then have time for QA, have time to ask questions, have time to dive a bit deeper. And I think anyone, and I highly recommend this, if you liked what Kenrick said, if you like what anyone else said during any of your conversations today, there's a really great feature in Zoom where you can select someone to direct message, and there's just message between you and them. If you want to create connections, if you want to create communication, if you want to communicate with these people once we exit this Zoom call today, message them now, get their contact information. This is really your chance and opportunity in order to form some really high quality connections. So we just highly recommend that as I kind of go out through the closing presentation slides here. So I'm just going to open up the screen, get it all shared and going. One thing people were asking earlier about the kind of mechanisms in which they can get a little bit more information regarding setting up Project Catalyst voting and whatnot. And I just wanted to suggest people, if you simply search up how to vote in Project Catalyst Cardano, you're going to get all of these great videos on how to go through the registration process. So if you're looking for more info on how to do that, YouTube is a great source. But getting back into the kind of presentation things and closing things off, I just think it's time for a big old thank you from myself, from the people that helped put all this together. And I'm sure that the hosts all really appreciate everyone coming up today. So I wanted to say a massive, massive, massive thank you to everyone for presenting their proposals, for asking questions, for encouraging growth and building, and of course, contributing to the future of Cardano. We really right now are building the groundworks of on-chain governance in a fully decentralized system that is trustless and permissionless. And of course,